The rain came down so hard that the highway looked like a river of shattered glass under the headlights. Most drivers sped past without slowing, eager to reach the warmth of home before the storm grew worse. But one pickup truck suddenly hit the brakes. Standing on the lonely roadside was a young mother, soaked from head to toe, clutching a tiny baby wrapped in a thin blanket that was already drenched. She wasn't waving for help anymore. She looked as though she had already accepted that no one would stop. When the single father rolled down his window, she leaned closer, trembling from the cold, and whispered only 6 heartbreaking words that changed his life forever. "We have nowhere to go tonight." Before we continue, if you believe kindness still exists, that one good decision can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing emotional stories that inspire hope around the world. Daniel Carter had learned the value of compassion the hard way. 3 years earlier, he had buried his wife after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise his 7-year-old daughter Lily alone. Every day since then had been a battle between grief and responsibility. He worked long hours repairing farm equipment in a nearby town, cooked dinner every evening, braided Lily's hair before school despite never learning how to do it properly, and quietly cried after she fell asleep whenever memories became too heavy. His life wasn't perfect, but it was stable, and he had promised himself that no matter how lonely he felt, his daughter would always know what love looked like. That rainy evening, Daniel was returning home after picking up medicine for Lily, who had been recovering from a fever. He almost drove past the woman like everyone else. The storm was dangerous, and strangers often brought trouble. Yet something about the baby's tiny face, shivering beneath the soaked blanket, reminded him of Lily as an infant. He knew he would never forgive himself if he ignored them. The woman introduced herself as Emma. She looked exhausted beyond words, her cheeks pale from hunger and fear. The baby, Noah, couldn't have been older than 8 months. Emma explained that she had escaped an abusive relationship only that morning. She had trusted someone who promised temporary shelter, but when she arrived, the door was slammed in her face after they realized she had no money to offer. Since then, she had wandered through the rain, hoping someone would simply treat her like a human being instead of a burden. Daniel hesitated. Inviting strangers into his home wasn't a decision he could make lightly, especially with Lily waiting there. But every instinct told him that leaving them behind would haunt him forever. He opened the truck door, turned on the heater, and handed Emma his daughter's spare blanket from the back seat. For the first time that day, tears rolled down Emma's face, not from fear, but from relief. When they arrived at Daniel's small farmhouse, Lily peeked through the window. At first she looked confused, but the moment she saw the baby, she rushed to the door carrying her favorite stuffed rabbit. Without hesitation, she offered it to Noah. Children often recognize kindness long before adults remember how. Emma cried again that night while sitting at the kitchen table. Daniel served hot soup, fresh bread, and warm tea. They weren't expensive meals, but to someone who hadn't eaten properly for days, they felt like a feast. Noah finally fell asleep with a full stomach, wrapped in dry clothes that once belonged to Lily. Over the following days, Daniel contacted local shelters, churches, and community organizations, hoping to find Emma a safe place to stay. Unfortunately, every shelter nearby was full. Some had waiting lists stretching for weeks. Emma insisted she didn't want to inconvenience Daniel any longer, but he refused to send her back into uncertainty. As the days passed, Lily and Noah formed an unexpected friendship. She read children's books aloud while Noah giggled whenever she made funny voices. The once silent farmhouse slowly filled with laughter again. Daniel noticed something surprising inside himself. For the first time since losing his wife, the house no longer felt painfully empty. Emma, determined not to rely on anyone forever, began helping around the property. She cleaned, cooked, and even assisted Daniel in organizing paperwork for his repair business. Her attention to detail saved him hours each week. Customers noticed improvements, and business slowly began to grow. Still, fear followed Emma everywhere. She constantly looked over her shoulder, worried that the men she had escaped would eventually find her. Daniel reassured her that she was safe, but he knew fear leaves scars deeper than bruises. One afternoon, those fears became reality. A familiar vehicle pulled into Daniel's driveway. Emma froze. The men stepped out demanding she return with him. His voice echoed across the yard, filled with anger and control. Daniel calmly stood between them. He didn't raise his fists or his voice. Instead, he reminded the men that intimidation would not work anymore and that the authorities had already been informed about Emma's situation. Neighbors, hearing the commotion, gathered nearby. Realizing he no longer held power over her, the men drove away in frustration. That evening Emma finally slept peacefully for the first time in months. Weeks turned into months. Emma found steady work at a local bakery whose owner admired her determination. She saved every paycheck, slowly rebuilding a future she once believed was impossible. Noah grew healthier and stronger each day, while Lily proudly called him her little brother friend. Daniel discovered that healing doesn't always happen through grand miracles. Sometimes it begins with opening a truck door during a storm. Sometimes it begins with offering a bowl of soup or a warm blanket to someone who has forgotten what kindness feels like. As Christmas approached, the farmhouse glowed with lights and laughter. Emma surprised Daniel by placing a small wrapped gift beneath the tree. Inside was a simple wooden picture frame holding a family photo they had taken together during the town festival. On the back she had written a sentence that left Daniel speechless. "The night you stopped your truck, you didn't just save 2 lives, you gave us a reason to believe in tomorrow." Daniel realized that while he had been trying to rescue someone else, they had quietly rescued him too. His lonely home had become a place filled with hope again. Lily smiled more often. He smiled more often. The memories of his late wife no longer brought only pain, they reminded him of the compassionate man she always believed he could be. If this story has touched your heart so far, please support the channel by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribing for more emotional stories that remind us kindness still changes lives. Before we reach the end, tell us in the comments, if you had seen Emma and her baby standing in the rain, would you have stopped to help? We'd truly love to hear your answer. The greatest acts of heroism rarely appear in newspapers. They happen quietly, on forgotten roads, during ordinary evenings, when someone chooses compassion over convenience. Daniel never imagined that stopping for a stranger in the rain would transform his own broken heart. Yet that single decision proved a timeless truth: sometimes the people we rescue end up saving us in return. And in a world where storms come without warning, the greatest shelter we can ever offer another person is simple human kindness.